Scene here out of Indie Music TV in Long Island, New York, Ronkonkoma. We have the honor of having these two great superstars, Mr. Shane Douglas and Mr. Sandman, but we're going to call him Hack.
Okay. I'm on board now.
My brother gave me that name when I was 5 years old. He was like 8 years old, so I've had it since then.
Beautiful.
That's how I got in WCW. Nash is walking up to me in the hallway one day, and he goes, you're not using the Sandman name. They're worried about getting sued. He goes, what do you want to be called? I said, Hack. He goes, okay. Literally, it was like a 10, 15-second conversation.
That was difficult. What was that, because of Metallica with Sandman?
No, it was because, I own the shit, and I prove them that I own the shit, but they're worried about Sandman comic book and Sandman fucking concrete company in California suing them.
Sandman comic book, Neil Gaiman, DC Comics. Okay, that I can.
I used to wear his shirts to the ring, actually, but nobody knew what they were or anything.
Oh, you used to wear the striped shirt?
The Sandman comic shirts. He had a couple different ones, like 4 different ones he sent to me.
Man, you should have wore that Sandman striped shirt. That would have been fucking sick. I wasn't even thinking about that, right? Oh. Well, as long as they pay you, who gives a shit, right? That's the way I think about it. That's what we were just talking about while we were off air. Shane asked what I thought was happening, how I felt about the country. I'm like, look, as things get better, I don't give a shit. And again, if they pay you, not to use Sandman, who gives a shit, right? It doesn't really matter. You're the gimmick anyway.
Yeah, but it would have been nice. It would have been nice to, yes. And I signed a $750,000 fucking deal with them. It would have been nice to have the same wrestling name pretty much your whole career.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Not a lot of guys can say that. You know what I mean? You had a 30-year career and you had the same name the whole time.
And on booking level, you were coming in as a ECW legend. I mean, to me, I was like, why is he not called Sandman? Oh, what are you gonna do?
Oh, and then they made it Hardcore Hack, which I hated because there was Hardcore Holly. I fucking hated that. Complained nothing happened.
Yeah, that kind of ruined it for me too.
Shane, real quick, I never realized that you actually broke an ECW, broke Pitbull number 2's neck. Is there some kind of discrepancy going on, whether it was real or you?
It was real. I mean,
it was fucking real, dude. The halo and everything.
Here's the funny thing about that was that he all day long, I was going to do a single drop DDT. And he kept telling me he was going to take it like a DDT. And I said, I kept telling him, no, because my weight's going to pull you off. Instead of coming straight, you're going to get pulled to a side and cause what's called a Jefferson fracture. Well, he kept saying it all day long, even though I would tell him the reasons not. I figured he was fucking with me. So I come off the ropes later in the night and give it to him. And instead of getting that boom, bump, that bounce bump, it was like a thunk, like it hitting concrete. And I looked over and I saw Gary roll into the apron. It looked like he was selling. And later that night in the dressing room, he's going, I got a kink in my neck, and he keeps jerking his neck around, right? So Monday morning, Todd Gordon calls me. He said, "Did you hear about Gary?" I said, "No." He said, "He's in surgery right now. You broke his neck." Because Todd and I used to always rib each other, right? I said, "Todd, I ain't falling for it." I said, "He was jerking his neck all over the place Saturday night at the building. He's fine." So I didn't buy it the whole week, like till the next week we get to work, right? Walk in, Gary's got this thing screwed into his skull. And I was like, oh, my eyeballs went boing, 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 like, holy shit. He had a bad fracture, too. The doctors told him had he not had such a thick, strong neck, that it would have killed him or crippled him, one of the two. And,
dude, I broke my C4 in half in the match with Cactus Jack. Totally my fault. It's a spot that I dreamt of doing with the table or whatever, but I got cracked by the chiropractor the next day. And Russ was wrestling the next weekend.
Wow.
Didn't know it until a couple years later when I got hurt in that junkyard match in WCW. Went to the hospital. They gave me a CAT scan. I told them, I said, they thought my neck was broken right away. I'm like, dude, I've been hurt worse than this. My neck's not broken. So finally, by about 6 a.m. in the morning after the MRI, they're like, yeah, you're right. This was broken like 5 to 10 years ago.
Holy cow.
I was walking around with a fucking wrestling with a broken neck for years.
You get killer weed. You got to share.
That's fucking dude. I don't know. I'm pretty lucky, dude.
It's weird to say it, because when I was getting off the Oxycontin in the hospital, I'm in there for like 3 weeks, and I'm watching TV one day, and all of a sudden I thought I was having a stroke. My whole body, I went blind. My whole body stiffened out, and right after this happened, like a seizure, the nurse looked at me and she said, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "You tell me." Well, they started running tests and everything, and after 4 or 5 days of tests, biopsies, MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays, the doctor came in and said, "When did you break your neck?" I said, "I never broken my neck." He said, no, you've had a broken neck. He said, the only thing that causes this is infection, surgery, or broken neck. I said, well, had to be the infection because I never had surgery. I never broke my neck. So they went down and same thing, put you in the MRI machine specifically for the neck now. Came back and said, sure enough, bilateral fracture of C3. But like I always told people, the doctor then and told people since, in wrestling, your neck and back are always sore.
Yeah, sure.
They're both hurting me right now a little bit.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's constant pain. It'll be that way for the rest of your life.
Yeah, well,
On a
speaking of
cold,
that,
rainy day, forget it.
Do you get up every morning in a lot of pain? Is that for you?
No, because I have such a sedentary life right now, and it's not like I ain't hopping out of bed like I used to. You know what I mean? Now it's more like pull a chair over,
Careful,
push
Sam,
up
man.
on that.
Careful. Yeah.
Take your time.
Yep. On the very controversial crucifixion angle, obviously between Raven and the Sandman, Shane, is it true you brought Kurt Angle to this particular event where this happened?
I didn't bring him. He, how that happened was he had been offered, I think, $1 million to do one appearance for WWF.
Okay.
And turned them down because he had just come off the Olympics with the gold medal. I think the guy got screwed. Like, he wasn't one of those guys that like cashed in and made big money from it. Mm-hmm. But he was still real guarded about his image at the time. Yeah. I connected to him through Mark Madden at Paul's behest, and I spoke to him on the phone. He was very nice, and he said, "I was going to be very careful." He said, "I can't be involved in any kind of crazy shit or whatever because," and I got it right. You know, the guy's trying to build a career. So we come to the building, and this happens, and Paul, all I heard was like. And Paul Heyman's running down the stairs from the crow's nest as fast as he can. He said, "You better get up here right away. Kurt's losing his mind." Well, I didn't know what was going on. I said, "Over what?" And he pointed to me. I thought I went, "Oh, right." Because I promised him nothing that would happen, right? So he came down, and he was hot, but he, once we explained to him and everything, he was fine. He sort of calmed down a bit from there. But Kurt was, I just saw him a few weeks ago. He's always been very gracious, very easy to talk with, reasonable, and he was hot. Again, you can understand, but he understood. And then, like the part that would never happen today, we didn't want that leaking out to hurt him. Mm-hmm. So we pulled all the Blackjack and Linda Rufo and Bill and George and Bill Apter, pulled them everybody back, George DeHenis, and explained to them and said, please. And they didn't go out for a while. I mean, those pictures stayed kayfabe for a while, and I think once Kurt saw that, like he was, I think, even more relieved that that we were living up to our word, and just one of those. But again, the whole thing happened over the freedom that we had in ECW. Sure. Right, like Hack and Scotty were in charge of their angle. I was in charge of my stuff, whoever I was working with. And, so something like that happens. That's how we always ran every show. Paul would give you a finish, and you might get that 5 minutes before match time, and the rest of it was up to you.
Did you?
5 of 8, dude. He doesn't even have the card put together yet.
It sounds.
We were the only company that ever advertised just people. Didn't even advertise matches, dude.
Right. Paul,
well, let me ask you this. Like in today's wrestling, right? I guess they got it from the movies, but they show you every match that's going to be on before you. Isn't there something lost with that whole thing? Like, wouldn't you rather just be like, don't know it? Like, for example, I got a choice of watching some old movie I've seen 100 times, or AEW comes on. AEW shows their whole lineup, and I'm like, forget it, not watching this crap tonight. Moving on.
They tip their hand right at the beginning of the show. Here's everything you're going to see. I prefer surprise.
Right.
Let me have a couple of surprises. Vince McMahon in the old days used to say, on this show you're going to see Mil Mascaras. He didn't say who he's fighting.
Right.
You're going to see him.
Yeah.
So that's all changed too. Just out of curiosity, Shane, did the crucifixion angle make you feel uncomfortable at all?
No.
Sam, were you like, yeah, this is the greatest thing ever, let's do this?
I loved it.
He rules. I mean, come on.
I loved it, dude. You're always looking to be the first to do something.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Cigarette cane, fucking beer, 5-year-old kid in the ring, dude. You're always looking for something to be the first something, dude.
Right. And what happened 6 months later?
They did it on WWE.
Thank you. Not as good either.
Sandman, C4P is asking, does Triple H ever send you royalties for lifting your gimmick? I don't know what this is about. Are they saying they stole your gimmick?
Is he talking about Stone Cold?
Well, Stone Cold.
I guess. I don't know.
Stone Cold didn't steal my fucking gimmick, dude. I went out there, drank a fucking 6-pack of my answer, smashed it on my head, and bled before I got into the ring. Stone Cold had a beer after a match.
I never saw Stone Cold.
That's not stealing my
Marlboro
gimmick
either. By the way, were those Marlboros?
Camel non-filter.
Dude! He's great. He's great. Yeah, me too.
I don't know if you guys know this, but now
Strikes.
the lawyer who is representing a lot of the past WWE stars that have passed away is now bringing a court case to the Supreme Court against the WWE.
Really?
For brain damage against all these wrestlers. I guess they went into Stuka's brain. Are you okay?
What's he talking about?
What do you guys feel about that?
It went into Snooker's brain.
I enjoyed it.
He enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
There you go.
Dude, I was at that company for a short time, you know what I'm saying? And I was doing a lot of fucking shit like that, you know what I'm saying? So to me, I want to get in this Hall of Fame someday. and if you get on the lawsuit, there's no chance of that, dude.
Right.
And two, but I just wasn't there long enough. You know, if I had my whole career there, it was ECW, maybe.
Right.
But.
Well, how do you feel about that? With Vince seems to be bearing the brunt of every wrestler who's wrestled in the last 40 years. What about the guys?
Well, of course, because he's the one with all the money.
But what about the guys who spend most of their career with guys like Crockett and WCW?
I don't know. So
WWF?
to me, that's like me. That's why I don't feel that I really should be part of it.
Right. Why should Vince be responsible for guys who never even got here, or some of them?
The flip side of that would be if I own a business and I sell you that business, and there's a bunch of liens against that business, you just bought the liens as well. Vince now owns all the.
But where does the NWA sit? Because WCW he purchased, but the NWA still exists, and most of those guys work for the NWA that I'm speaking of. You know, these guys from a long time ago.
But from a court, do they just own the name, or is it any kind of corporate?
That's a great question.
I don't know.
What do you mean that NWA still exists?
It still exists.
It does?
Talking about NWA Power, which doesn't
Yeah,
I don't even know
the
what that
National
is.
Wrestling
Billy
Alliance
Corgan.
title is still out there.
Oh, is that it?
It's
okay.
still out there
Realize it
on a
was
very
called
small
that.
scale, but it still does exist.
Is that Chicago?
I'm not sure.
No, I think in Atlanta they're doing it, right?
Is that where they're
I think
based
so.
out of?
But don't hold me to it. I'm not an
It looks.
expert on it.
The visual look of the show looks like the old 10th and Techwood studio.
It's like you're watching Georgia
never see what
Championship
channels
Wrestling
it
a
on.
little bit. Well, it was
YouTube.
on
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
But
I don't think it's
the
going
pandemic
anymore. I'm not sure.
crushed it. They lost their momentum, and I haven't seen them on recently. So, but it was interesting. It was old school. It was like watching an old Florida Championship Wrestling show or something like that. It
Oh,
was
wow.
very
Florida
interesting.
Championship Wrestling.
Kind of
baby.
dug it, you know. I thought it was
Speaking
cool.
of Vince, he's getting older, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, sooner or later that time's going to come, I guess. If either one of you had to, talk at his funeral or speak at his funeral, what would you say about him?
I'd say thanks, dude.
Me?
I would
Just
say
get up there.
thanks.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, thanks for letting me live. That helped me live my life stream.
There you go. There
Shane?
you go.
Well, I mean, you can't argue with success, right? I mean, the guy, no promoter previous to Vince McMahon could have ever imagined the business to the level he took it. To be a publicly traded company, to be making billions of dollars with no fans, and he's really pulled a rabbit out of a hat with this. But I think, in full honesty, you'd have to give both sides of that, right? I mean, he did incredible stuff with the business. The one thing that I take umbrage with Vince on is I remember him saying to me in conversations in several interviews before and after, I'm sure most of the other guys in the dressing room at different times, that his goal in taking over the business from his dad, buying it from his dad, was he wanted to transform it and bring it into the 20th century then, right? I guess implying that it was still being run like the 19th century. And he did. He succeeded beyond anybody's wildest dreams, except the talent is still being paid in the same manner it was being paid back in those dark ages of wrestling. I still have my old contracts, and I pulled them out last week for my podcast, and there's a clause in there that, I'm paraphrasing, that you could work for any other promotion on the planet except, and it listed all, like New Japan, All Japan, ECW, WCW, any place you could make a living.
Right.
When you look at it, the IRS has 20 or 21 criteria. If you wanted to file your taxes as an independent contractor, you have to meet all 21 of those. 20 out of 21,
No good.
you're not an independent contractor. So to me, a real independent contractor would be able to say, hey, Vince, next Monday's my kid's 21st birthday. I really want to be there, so I won't be here next Monday. And then the week after that, I'm going to fly down and hang out with my friends down in AEW, and while I'm there, I might as well pick up a paycheck and perform for them. That would be a true independent contractor. I think we all know the joke of what would happen if you try to pull
Well, you
like
could have, but then he would just terminate his agreement with you.
bingo, right? So your contract would be ended. But as soon as you accept it, from the way I interpret it, again, I'm no attorney, but with the way I interpret those 21 criteria, is that, first of all, like 6 of them don't even loosely apply to the loosest interpretation of the door business. But as a house painter, if I decide to come paint your house today, you can't tell me I can't go paint his house tomorrow or Hack's the day after that.
Right.
And I can, as long as we don't have a written contract saying I'll get it done X amount of time.
But again, if you went and did Hack's house, I could turn around to you and say, you're not going to do any more of my houses anymore.
True.
Right?
True. Right. And your house will be half painted. So, it's the stuff that's really blowing my mind right now is that any kid, anybody, they should all be firing their attorneys for having signed a contract that gives Vince the rights to their legal name. That is my